Hey guys, today I have another disassembly video for you, this time on a Grand Power Stribog, this one being the SP9A3, the roller delayed blowback version. So let's tear into it, see how it works, and also compare it to the B&T APC9, which it is often compared to and referenced as a copy potentially of. Alright guys, so we can go ahead and start out by popping out our Grand Power Stribog magazine. And then the first thing we're going to do is going to be very AR-15-like. We have two push pins. Realistically, you only need to remove the rear one here. They do get a little bit tight, so I am going to use a punch on this guy to go ahead and press that rear one through, at which point your upper and lower receiver will hinge apart. Now, you don't necessarily need to remove the lower receiver entirely to maintain it. However, I'm going to go ahead and do that just for the sake of the video. This front pin can be very tight. I'll go ahead and pop that guy across, and then we can go ahead and remove the lower receiver. Alright, so just taking a look at the lower, there's not a ton to see here. We do have our 90-degree safety selector, which is ambidextrous on both sides. Some people don't like these. I actually don't mind them at all. But if we look inside at the trigger group, it is more or less AR-15 style. So you can see we have the sear there and then the hammer. There are rumors that certain AR-15 trigger groups will work in here, and they do sell aftermarket lowers that will absolutely work with different AR-15 trigger groups. Go ahead and lock that guy back, and then you'll see this stamped steel part up front. This is your bolt catch and bolt release. And there's a little bit of a ledge on either side of it, so you can hit it from either side of the receiver, so it is fully ambidextrous there. And in line with that, we also have AR-15 style magazine releases on both sides of the receiver, so it's very, very easy to use. And that's really all there is to see in the lower. Next up for the upper receiver, we can just pop our stock off, which is extremely easy to do. We just have to press down on it. It'll pop straight off the back. And while this was absolutely influenced by the APC9 in some ways, you can see it does not have any sort of a hydraulic buffer attached to the end of the stock here. The stock itself is very simple. This is the factory stock for one of these. It is pretty much entirely polymer to include the button here, and has a fairly long length of pull, but it does seem pretty robust. Now moving back to the receiver, we can go ahead and take out our recoil spring. So you can see there is a little rubber buffer at the back, so pull back on the charging handle a little bit and you can pull the buffer out of the back of the bolt and carrier. And you can see there's nothing too crazy here. It is just nested two different rods in there, but pretty simple design, nothing crazy. Now for the bolt, next step is just going to be turning our receiver down towards the ground, and then our bolt along with the roller and this little roller mechanism here with the channel will come out of the receiver. Now real quick, I want to demonstrate how the roller delay blowback action works on one of these. So you can see we have a couple of components here. Up front is a little weight, and you'll see this is actually marked on the side here, US. So the very early imported SP9A3s had an original little block up here that was really set up for NATO powered ammunition, so your 124 grain plus P, and that was not reliable with our 124 grain or 115 grain American ammunition, which is lower back pressure. So they had to introduce a new block here, which essentially had a different angle on it. So if I go ahead and just let this pin, our roller, drop through, so this is what is actually bearing on the two lugs on the inside of the receiver to delay the action opening. And you can pull it out here. You can see there's an angled bit in here, the shiny polish bit. And that had to be changed as far as the angle goes a little bit on the US model to make it more reliable with a wider range of ammunition. Now looking at the bolt itself, you can see it's actually fairly similar to the original APC9 bolt in a lot of ways. So here's the bolt for my APC9 Pro. And externally, if I get it lined up the correct way, you can see there are some similarities, just being both 9mm blowback actions. They just do things slightly different ways. There are definite differences here, so it isn't a straight copy, and the APC9 bolt is significantly heavier than the Stribog bolt since it does have that delayed action. Coming back to the upper receiver, we can remove the charging handle very easily by pressing it back to the disassembly notch here. It pulls out the side. If we want to change it over to the left side, this is where we can do that. Just drops in over there, so very, very easy to do. Again, non-reciprocating charging handle, which rides in a polymer carrier in here. So we can actually go ahead and remove this carrier too. It's a little bit more difficult on this, and I'll go ahead and use a punch to pop it out the front here. And you can see it is a very, very simple polymer piece. You really don't need to remove it, but this is all the charging handle is riding in. Now looking back at the receiver, there's not a whole lot else to see in there. So you can see we do have a fixed ejector right there, and then our chamber in the back end. If you can get a look down the handguard, you can see there's actually a castle nut down there, and that is how the barrel is installed on one of these. But I'll go ahead and roll in my APC9 receiver so we can compare them. So here are the two receivers side by side, and as you can see, design-wise, they are similar in a couple of ways, but there are some major differences as well. So they're both extruded aluminum receivers, so you can see that just in the basic design of it. If I flip them over here, you can see there are differences in the cutout and the way that the barrel installs on here. For the APC9, the trunnion and barrel installs with these 6 screws on either side of the receiver versus a castle nut or a barrel nut, which is on the Stribog. So that's a little bit different. Some of the similarities though, you can see they both have a fixed ejector in there which attach in a fairly similar way on the side of the receiver, which is kind of necessitated by the design that these both use. But overall, they are fairly similar in quite a few different ways. And of course, the Stribog does have the original flip-up iron sights. Now, the Gen 1 of the APC9 also had flip-up iron sights, which were almost identical to these. So that's another way that they're similar, but again, there are some pretty major differences. Now, if we look on the inside of the APC or the Stribog receiver here, it's going to be hard to see, but right in there where the charging handle goes in, you can see where the rollers actually recess into the receiver there. And I'll give you a better look at that in a minute. There you can kind of see them. And while it's still assembled here, I can actually show you the roller, which is right here, moving in and out of its little channel there. So you can see as I pull the bolt back, there's a gap here between this block and the bolt carrier. As that pushes back, it lifts up on the roller, which as soon as it gets up all the way out of those channels, it allows the bolt to retract. So that's how the roller delay mechanism works on here. And here is the Grand Power Stribog SP9A3 fully disassembled. As you can see, it's a little bit more complicated than most straight blowback designs because of that roller delay system, but there's still not a ton of parts to this thing. So thank you for checking out the video. Please like, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff. I also have my Patreon going if you feel like contributing. But please stay tuned for some upcoming reviews I got going on.